Alright, in this video we're going to take a look at placing 30, 60, 90 triangles in the coordinate plane. Alright, picking up from the last video, in example 2D here, we have 120 degrees, and we're going to find the 6 trig functions or 6 trig ratios for 120 degrees. So if we draw a 120 degree angle in standard position, the terminal side is going to end up in the second quadrant where our x coordinates are negative and our y coordinates are positive. So we want to find how many degrees this angle is, in other words, to find the reference angle for 120 degrees. And in order to do that, if we would have gone all the way to the negative x-axis, that would have been 180, but we stopped when we got to 120. So that means that this angle here is going to be 180 degrees minus the 120, which is 60 degrees. So here we have a 30, 60, 90 triangle in the second quadrant where the 60 degree angle is sort of at the base. And recall that in the 30, 60, 90 triangle, the hypotenuse, the value of r here, is 2. Opposite the 30 degree angle is 1, and opposite the 60 degree angle is square root of 3. So we have a 1, square root of 3, and 2 as the side lengths of this triangle. Now again, because we are in the second quadrant, this 1 at the base is going to be a negative 1. Our x's are negative in the second quadrant. And this height is going to be the square root of 3, and it's going to remain positive because in the second quadrant, your y coordinates are positive. So this point right here would have coordinates negative 1 and square root of 3. So pulling the triangle out of the picture, we have negative 1, square root of 3, and 2. So now let's find the big three, sine, cosine, and tangent. So first up, the sine of 120 degrees is going to be square root of 3 opposite y over 2. So y over r, square root of 3 over 2. The cosine of 120 degrees is going to be negative 1 for x over 2 for r. So cosine of 120 degrees is negative 1 over 2, or negative 1/2. The tangent of 120 degrees is y over x, excuse me, which is square root of 3 over negative 1, or negative square root of 3. Now for the reciprocal of sine is cosecant. That's going to be r over y, or 2 over the square root of 3. And multiplying the numerator and denominator by the square root of 3 to rationalize it, we get 2 times the square root of 3 over square root of 3 times square root of 3 is 3. So cosecant of 120 degrees, r over y, 2 over the square root of 3, gives us 2 square root of 3 over 3. So a lot of the common ratio values that we had from right triangle trigonometry. Secant of 120 degrees is going to be r over x. 2 over negative 1 is negative 2. And finally, cotangent of 120 degrees, x over y, negative 1 over the square root of 3. When we rationalize that, multiply the numerator and denominator by the square root of 3. Negative 1 times the square root of 3 is negative square root of 3. And square root of 3 times square root of 3 is the square root of 9, which is just 3. So no more square roots in the denominator. All right, example 2e, 150 degrees. Again, we're still in the second quadrant for 150 degrees. And to find the measure of this angle, much like in the last example, we'll take 180 and then we'll minus the 150 from that to get the measure of this angle. And 180 minus 150 is 30. So here we have a 30, 60, 90 triangle in the second quadrant. This time, the 30 degrees is at the bottom, not the 60. So opposite the 30 degrees is 1. Opposite the 60 degrees is square root of 3. And our hypotenuse, our value of r, is going to be 2. And again, the x-coordinate of square root of 3 is going to be negative, so we'll have negative square root of 3 and positive 1 for the y, since we are in the second quadrant, and the y coordinates are positive. So this point has the coordinates negative square root of 3 and 1. So finding the big three, start with sine. The sine of 150, y over r, is 1 over 2, or a half. Cosine of 150, x over r, negative square root of 3 over 2. Tangent 150, y over x, 1 over negative the square root of 3. And when we rationalize that, we get negative square root of 3 over 3. So hopefully you're seeing a lot of these same ratios, just changing up the signs, the positive versus negative signs on them, and getting a lot of the same answers. For the reciprocals, reciprocal sign is cosecant. That's going to be r over y, so 2 over 1 is 2 for 150 degrees. Reciprocal of cosine is secant, r over x, 2 over negative square root of 3, which we saw in the last example, gives us negative 2 square root of 3 over 3. And finally, reciprocal of tangent is cotangent, x over y, negative square root of 3 over 1 is negative square root of 3. All right, finally, example 2f, we have 210 degrees. 210 degrees ends up in quadrant 3, where our x-coordinate and y-coordinate are both negative. So this point right here has a negative coordinate for x and a negative coordinate for y. And as far as 210 degrees is concerned, to find the measure of this angle here, we went 210 degrees. Here we have up to 180 degrees, so if we take 210 degrees minus the 180 degrees, that's going to tell us how many degrees this angle makes. And 210 minus 180 is 30. So once again, we have a 30-degree angle here, so opposite 30 is going to be a negative 1. The hypotenuse is 2, and the x-coordinate is going to be negative square root of 3. So both, remember, x and y coordinates are negative in the third quadrant. So negative 1 for y, negative square root of 3 for x, and 2 for r. So really it's just a matter of getting the signs right, the SIGN-S signs. So for 210 degrees, the sine of 210, y over r, negative 1/2. Cosine of 210 degrees, negative square root of 3 over 2. Tangent of 210 degrees, negative 1 over negative square root of 3. The two negatives make it positive, and then rationalizing 1 over the square root of 3, we get square root of 3 over 3. And finally, the reciprocals. Reciprocal of sine is cosecant, so the cosecant of 210 degrees, r over y, 2 over negative 1 is negative 2. For secant, reciprocal of cosine, r over x, 2 over negative square root of 3 is negative 2 square root of 3 over 3, after we rationalize that. And then finally, cotangent of 210 degrees, x over y, negative square root of 3 over negative 1 gives us positive square root of 3. All right, that about does it for this video. In the next video, we're going to take a look at quadrantal angles where the terminal side lies on one of the axes. So I will see you then.